Well. Saturday, July 22nd, noon Eastern Time. I'm Bob Harris. This is the Football Diehards YouTube channel. It's time for our weekly Ask Me Anything live stream, which is really an Ask Us Anything live stream since we had a series of great guests join me for these, and today is no different. But before we get to that, I want to go ahead and remind you, FootballDiehards.com is the website. You should go there. We appreciate you joining us here on our YouTube channel every Saturday at this time. Also on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for on the Hot Street live streams, which are fantastic as well. Hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, all the YouTube-y stuff that YouTube loves so much. Hit the like button. Feel free to dislike as well. I'm going to dislike us right now just to make sure everyone feels comfortable with that. Hello, Brian. Hello, Dame. Thanks for coming. Hey, Joe Bear. How you doing? Royal Slade, great to see you. Appreciate everyone showing up and having here for a good time. As always, go ahead and throw the comments and questions and suggestions and other shenanigans in the chat, and we'll work our way through all of that. And by we, I mean me and my guest. First, though, everyone wish happy birthday to Emil. It is Emil Cadlick's birthday today. He's there in the background lurking around, pulling all the strings and levers here. So wish him a happy birthday in the chat if you would. And now for the other half of the week, Stacy Perez from Fantasy and Frames. Great new guest. Have not had her on, but I have done a little bit with her. Did a Fantasy and Frames mock draft recently for the Scott Fish Bowl, in which I have famously mentioned got my tail handed to me, and she is one of the reasons why. So, Stacy, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate your time and the information we're about to get off of you.
Yeah, Bob, thank you so much for having me. This is a blast. I can't think of a better way to spend a Saturday than talking about fantasy football with all of our friends. That's like just the best for me. I love it.
And many of our friends showing up here. Gemma the Icon, Mr. Scampers, Andrea, Dynasty Deviant. Good morning, everybody. Dame, nice to see you. Few two for you. By the way, Fantasy and Frames, everyone, great group of people out there. I've, had the pleasure of hanging out with Jorge and Nate. Jorge Edwards, Nate Markham, and Canton the last couple of years. And just did Chris and Rhett's show. Drew was not there that day, missed him, but watched them regularly. So, and Zach Berger, Gator, everyone there. I'm leaving names off, so I'll feel bad. But I just go give them a follow at Fantasy and Frames. Also, subscribe to their YouTube channel. Put out a ton of great content, have a series of great shows. I usually catch something every night. And Stacy is a part of that. So, Stacy, tell us a little bit about, your approach. I've been listening. I know you're in a ton of best ball leagues. Talk a little bit about the benefits of best ball, at this time of year and, where it gets you as you head into your more serious drafts in August.
Yeah, so I actually looked at this morning because I was curious to see how many best balls I had done so far. And I will just tell you, complete, just being totally candid here, I started drafting Super Bowl weekend. So just, check off that little degenerate box for me over here. Can't get enough of drafting. But I feel like drafting, even if it's just a small dollar thing or a high stakes one, whatever it is, I really like drafting all season long because I feel like it kind of keeps me sharp, going into the season when you're going to be doing, your, I would say more important drafts, but the ones that probably have a little bit more at stake than what you're doing during the off season. It just kind of keeps you sharp, as you're going along, kind of be able to keep up with the trends and the ADP and who's falling, who's rising, the news, that kind of stuff, and where it's affecting everybody going in drafts. So I just really enjoy doing that. I was getting my nails done the other day, popped up in the chair and said, you know what, I'm just going to rip up a quick little best ball here. And, you can just do it anywhere. It's so accessible nowadays. You've got it right on your phone and it's a great time to be a fantasy player, really no matter what format you're doing. But best ball is just so much fun. It's one of my favorite formats. And I actually didn't even know about it till a few years ago. So.
Right. I mean, it's really rose to prominence. By the way, the person who invented best ball is also having his birthday. Emil Cadlick created the first best ball draft, I want to say in 1998.
Oh my God.
FanX League. And for the same reason that we're all doing it now, is like we were all very busy and didn't have time to manage teams in the season, but wanted to do drafts. And the set and forget it format is always great. I totally agree. And by the way, Dame says this is where degenerates go to find other degenerates. She is totally right.
Yes.
And so I think we're at about the same level, and we're up above the 50 draft range. And I too started in February. It's all about being steeped in a subject, like any subject. It just kind of reminds me of something like anytime anyone asks advice, like from Matthew Berry, about getting into business, he says reps matter, and he's so right, right? Like just doing this job, reps matter, being able to talk, but also when you're out there drafting, reps matter. Do your reps, people. The more you do, the better you feel, the better you understand where ADP is and where you're going to get players and who you need to reach on. And we all have our guys, and we're going to talk about some of Stacy's guys here. I want to hit a couple news items. I see some questions starting to come in, so we will get to those here as well, people. Again, appreciate y'all coming in, hit that like button and whatnot. We like that. Or hit the dislike button. I'm okay. I'm a big one. I'll take it. Just the Ravens yesterday, a couple of developments. J.K. Dobbins starts camp on the active pup. He can come off at any time. Gus Edwards has also been nursing an injury. So they signed Melvin Gordon, a deal, and this is the key part of the language, worth up to $3.1 million. So he is by no means guaranteed anything. 30-year-old running backs, you know how it is. But last year, I think Kenyon Drake ended up being like the leading fantasy back there. So, and Rashad Bateman did not make it. So, I'm not real worried about the running backs. I think, Dobbins is going to be okay. But we've got the Todd Monken offense coming in here that, we know they want to throw the ball more. Rashad Bateman did not show up for the start of camp. I don't think it's anything contentious. He had the foot issue, had to get the cortisone shot recently. So he comes, we come back and they say they expect him soon. But this pass-heavy offense, aside from Mark Andrews, is there anyone we should be investing in here, or is it just like is the price going to dictate your actions?
I think really, I think you're right. Price there, with that team, before, we have, obviously they have the new OC now, and now I'm kind of willing to take a little bit more risk with that team, with their offensive guys. And I just don't know. I've never been a real big Bateman fan, so I've always kind of stayed away from him. I really think if you're going to go with anybody right off the bat, it's going to be Andrews if you want to go with one of those elite tight ends and want to pay that price in those drafts, because he does go pretty high. But I really like Zay Flowers, coming out in the draft. I think he's going to be a real fun addition to their team. So really excited about him. I've taken him in several places. He's a great value. You can get him a little bit later. So he's real fun in that regard. But with the running backs, right? Your number one running back on that team is Lamar Jackson, right? He's always going to be the first. He's got those legs. He's going to be going. So, if you're looking at Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and now, we've got Melvin Gordon. Thank you. It just completely went off my head.
It's easy Gordon, to forget him.
Gosh, it's just all those free agent running backs, right? They're all kind of melding together at this point. But it's so hard for me to take one of those guys and rely on them to be the guy on my team, just because you just don't know. It's always kind of a revolving door back there. They've had so many guys come in and come out, late, season signings, that kind of thing. So I typically don't trust that backfield. That's one I typically tend to stay away from. Even though I think you can get Dobbins at a pretty decent value, but just not my favorite to go after. I think there's a lot of value at that position, just overall. And there's a lot of other guys I'd prefer besides the ones in the Baltimore backfield.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that as well. I mean, it's hard to sort out. I think, Mark Andrews is the piece I'm investing there in the receiving core anyway. A few related questions. By the way, Zach has shown up. So greetings, Zach. Nice to see you. Albert as well.
Yes.
I see Zach everywhere, so it's no surprise. I see almost all of you everywhere. So a few questions that are kind of related to this as well. So wanted you to rate these four quarterbacks: Lamar, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, and Justin Fields.
Okay, so I'm going to write this down. All right, Lamar, Herbert, Fields, and Lawrence. Okay. All right, I think obviously Lamar is the guy, right? Number one, if we're talking about that. So Lamar's number one. I mean, has he had some injuries? Sure, but who hasn't, right? I think he's got the most upside out of any of these players. After that, I think it's kind of a toss-up between Lawrence and Herbert. I mean, they're both great offensive, great talented guys. Herbert was injured last year, so even though still I think he threw for a ton of yards. But I don't know. I think I'm going to give the edge to Herbert, with maybe him and Lawrence being kind of interchangeable there, because I really like the Jaguars this year. I think they're going to have a lot of fun in that second year, with Doug Peterson. And then I'm going to go with Justin Fields just because I think he's really talented also, kind of in that same kind of like, really great running quarterback. But the throwing, though, I'm still questionable about that offense, about, his pass catchers there, Darnell Mooney, and then Chase Claypool? DJ Moore now. But I don't know. I think Fields is probably going to end up coming up at the bottom of that group for me.
Stacy Perez, Justin Fields would like you to know he's going to throw for 4,000 yards this year. And if he does,
I hope he does.
The first time in a while, I would be great if he does. I'm kind of with you. So I think Herbert's maybe in for a bounce back. I think of these players that if you're looking for a guy that you're drafting, not as your QB1 who has a chance to be the QB1, I think all these guys are in the mix, but I think it's more likely the runners that are going to have that ability, slightly more so. So I might go Lamar Fields myself, but again, all of these guys have quarterback one upside here. Overall, I think this year, I think it's totally fair to say. I have another question related to this. If the offense of Baltimore is truly an upgrade, or is it just a testament to how bad Lamar's weapons have been? Boy, that's a tough question. What do you think, Stacy? That's an interesting question. Dynasty Deviant, I see you out there.
Yeah, that's our new Dynasty Deviant, our new co-host on our Dynasty 365 show. What's up, Chris? Oh gosh. Yeah, that's a tough question to answer. I mean, they have been pretty rough there, right? The last few years, they haven't had a lot to be excited about other than Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson. And, but I think there is hope with their new OC. They're kind of switching things up, maybe, bringing in some new options for them, giving them a new fresh look. So, oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know the right answer here, Bob. What do you think?
I think, look, Todd Monken's offenses have been great in Georgia the last 2 years, been one of the most prolific scoring offenses in college football. Obviously, before that, had a great round in Tampa, where they passed the ball extremely well. Had a great season with the Browns, where I think Baker Mayfield's career year, and also Nick Chubb fared really well. So I'm excited. I just think maybe it got stale, mostly. I mean, Greg Roman had been there a while, and they were leaning a little more heavily than they wanted to on the rushing ability. We can go back to Lamar's MVP season. He threw the hell out of the ball, and I'm hoping they throw it more now. But I think from a fantasy perspective, investing in the passing attack, if it's not Mark Andrews, it should be Lamar Jackson, because I think we're gonna have a little mix. Really positive reporting on Zay Flowers, though. By the way, I want to say that the people on the ground who have been watching have really had some positive things to say. But it might just be because Rashad Bateman is not out there. Remember, he's also another former first-round pick, right? So we'll have to, there's things to be seen. I'm kind of maybe looking at the values. I have a share or two of Odell. Do you have much interest, in Odell, or is he someone you're avoiding, or maybe only if the price is right?
Honestly, I don't think I would, and I could be wrong on this, but I don't think I have any Odell anywhere. I don't know. I mean, he is a little bit older. Again, I think Andrews is going to be the guy there still. And then, he's just so injury prone, right? So I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of Odell, especially because he's going to be one of the first Baltimore guys other than Lamar and Andrews, off the board. And I just don't know that I'm willing to pay that price for him.
Mr. Scampers, you could always accidentally hit the thumbs down button. It's okay, but it's okay. I always hit it because I feel like superstitious. We have a few points out here. Iceman 1800, we're going to get to this. We're going to talk about some sleeper wide receivers and some under-the-radar players that we've been in drafts. I want to get to Andrea's question here. As Superflex Dynasty Pick 12, she has Hurts already. We'll talk about your SFB draft because you did a little stacking. Already, should she draft? Who should I draft, she says. Wide receivers are A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Olave, or the next quarterback, Fields or Trevor Lawrence, 4 points. So, Andrea, do you already have those wide receivers? If so, I mean, is it just a choice, just a quarterback? I'd be interested to know. It's kind of trying to figure it out.
She said that's a super flex?
Yeah, has Hurts already. Who should I draft? Wide receivers are she's loaded. So the quarterback question, it looks like Fields or Trevor Lawrence in a 4-point per TD pass league.
Ooh. Yeah, and she's the 12th pick. So, I would go with Lawrence. Go with Trevor Lawrence there. That seems like that's fun. Jalen Hurts and Trevor. I like that. I like that pick.
Yeah, I think, look, I love Trevor Lawrence. I feel slightly rated ahead of him, but I think over the course of time of Dynasty, if this is a dynasty, I think Lawrence, that's an ascending offense to me. I probably want the piece of that offense in Dynasty. By the way, Gator says hello, Stacy, in the chat.
What's up, Gator J?
Wished me good luck keeping up with you, and so far she's been right.
Oh
so keeper league, 3 keepers allowed, not the same position. Previous season draft spot is used for the keepers. He got Saquon in round 2 and Rhamondre in the 10th. Which represents the best value to you?
Oh gosh. Well, where did he get Rhamondre?
10th.
10th. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty great value there. Although now I'm a little concerned about Rhamondre, right? Because we don't know what's going on there. They're working out Lenny. Yeah, that's a little scary if they're going to bring somebody in. But I like that value, though. He got Rhamondre in the 10th. I mean, I took him last year in a lot of places in a lot of 0 RB builds because you could just get him so cheap, and he was just ended up being excellent. This year, obviously, his price kind of reflects that because now he's, going in the 2nd, 3rd rounds. Yeah, I think I'd probably say Rhamondre in the 10th is what I would think.
I would as well. Well, totally. And look, developments in both these cases, Kevin, are going to be an issue for you. You're going to have to, and this is a great reminder that we should all be thinking of right now. It's like a lot of times, like almost all the times, the stories we're talking about the end of July are not the stories we're talking about the start of September. Maybe these things are resolved, everything's figured out. But it is, when you're having to make these decisions now, you have to go with the best information available. We'll remind you the Patriots are the betting favorite to land Dalvin Cook. Don't know that they will. Don't know that they won't. He's got some breaking kind of news there, not today, but some news this week that he had offered a payment in a domestic violence case. Offered the plaintiff $1 million to write the league a letter saying he didn't do anything. That seems like a lot of money to ask somebody to say that. So, and she said her attorney said, "Go to hell. We'll see you in court." So we'll see how this all plays out. I don't know that this is going to be, if this is going to keep someone from ultimately signing him, but it might complicate it or slow it down. Wendy early out in the chat saying hello. So I did want to talk about the Giants quickly because, and we can kind of mix in the sleeper wide receivers. They added James Robinson, added a running back, obviously, with Saquon's issue. And Saquon's made sounds like, would he be willing to hold out? Yeah, maybe, but probably not. I don't think honestly, it's hard for me to imagine any of these players, and by any of them, I mean Barkley and Josh Jacobs, not ultimately taking that $10 million. The concern then becomes when do they show up, and are we concerned for a slow start or early injuries? So we'll do that. But I want to talk about the receiving core because they added yet another slot receiver, which seems like the piece they least need. And is this another case where we go to Baltimore where Mark Andrews is essentially the wide receiver 1? I'm treating Darren Waller the same way in New York, but they had Cole Beasley do a group of slot receivers that includes Slayton or
Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Paris Campbell, Wandale, Jalen Hyatt. How many more fingers do I have? I mean,
the list goes. Jamison Crowder is there, so
oh my god.
So are we at the point maybe where it's just best to draft either the tight end or the different piece, the piece I like, Isaiah Hodgins, who is not a slot receiver necessarily. Or is it best to just invest in the quarterback and let things sort themselves out and get the value there? I love the Brian Dable offense, but man, figuring out which pieces at this point is pretty difficult.
Oh my gosh, it's so difficult. It's I saw it today on Twitter. I wish I could remember who posted it, but it was the Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other and it was all the Giants receivers, right? It's crazy. But yeah, I really do like Isaiah Hodgins a lot too. I like Wandale coming back after his injury. I think he's going to play a part in that offense, but yeah, what part is he going to play? But yeah, if I'm going after anybody on that, it's either Danny Dimes or Darren Waller.
Yeah, I think so as well. That's the pieces. And I do have a lot of Hodgins late. I'm fine with that. And I'm fine if you want to take
he's so cheap.
The other piece, right. Yeah, all these pieces are cheap enough. And I guess that's a question, that goes back to the deep wide receivers. I think you could take a lot of turns. And we'll get into some more specifics on that, Iceman 1800. So stand by for that. Andrea wanted to clarify. All those pieces were available. So those wide receivers were also available at that pick and not just the quarterback. So the list of wide receivers.
Okay.
She has Hurts. She's got A.J. Brown available, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Olave, or the 2 quarterbacks.
Okay. Well, if she's on the turn there at the 12, it's going to be a long time before you get to pick again, right? So, I mean, unless it's like a third round reversal or something, but if it was that, I'm sure she would have told us. So if you're picking there at the 12, you're going to your second spot and it's a super flex. I think I'm still taking you quarterback, even though, as a 0 RB girl over here, like all of those, receivers just, are so exciting and enticing to me. But I think in that format, I think you still got to go with the quarterback.
Yeah, I probably would do. I mean, the AJ Brown is tempting. Again, you did a nice stack in the Sky Fishbowl that we're going to get to. But I would probably go with the quarterback too. So you pick 12. So if you're at the turn and you can pick two, I would pick Brown and one of the quarterbacks. But if it's just we're down to the single pick, it would probably be the quarterback for me at that point.
Yeah. I don't think you can go wrong with those guys that are available either, right? Everybody that's there that she could pick from, those are great choices to have.
Absolutely not. And I do like the stack. Zach Berger reminds us the 2019 MVP season for Lamar was Hollywood, Boykin, Snead, Chris Moore, and Mark Andrews. So
that's ugly, isn't it?
It doesn't necessarily need a high-powered receiving core, though, to get the job there right now.
Just a warm body down the field.
Chose the wide receiver. A Dynasty Standard League, is it time to dump McCaffrey while his value is high? If so, who would you try to trade for the running back or wide receiver category? What position would you be after, Stacy? So where are you at on Christian McCaffrey, just in general? Where do you have him ranked right now? And also, is it time? I feel like, I guess on before, I think Lauren Carpenter was the one who said it's always time, or maybe Rich Sanders said it's always time to move McCaffrey because, you're always going to get great value for him.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. He's still an elite guy. He's still the number one, running back going off the board, no matter what you're, in any of these. Obviously not just like a rookie draft though, but his value is so high now. If for some reason he does drop off this year, which is anybody dropping off is always possible. You could get a lot for him at this point. If you are looking to trade him, then he's probably the number one. I'm sure he's the number one running back on your team. So you've got to have something to replace that. So I think I would want to know who's your RB2, who else do you have on your team before making that decision. But you're probably looking to get a replacement for him, somebody going into the future. I don't know if you could get Bijan for him. I mean, that's going to require quite the haul. But maybe somebody a little bit lower than that, maybe a Gibbs, who knows? Some of the other guys, I think there's just such great value in the running back class this year. There's so many guys that I think have a lot of potential to be really good. But yeah, I think if you are looking to trade McCaffrey, you've got to replace him somehow. So you're going to be looking at some of those younger running backs. Exactly.
Gibbs in a piece or Gibbs in a pick or something along those lines.
You're going to have to throw in a pick.
Yeah, it wouldn't be against going wide receiver. They're obviously the longer term values, but also I'm pretty comfortable with McCaffrey just in redraft. Or you have him at the top of your ranks, or is he somewhere is he falling a little bit?
Yeah, he's definitely my top running back right now for sure. I think you've got him, you've got Ekler there. Those guys, Jonathon Taylor, even though I lovingly referred to it as getting Jonathon Taylored last year after taking him so high and just not being a great season for him. But I think maybe things are a little bit different for him this year. But you've got those guys. You've got, if this whole contract stuff wasn't going on with Saquon, I'd throw him up there too. But as far as McCaffrey goes, he is my number one guy at running back for sure.
Joe Aber wants to know, from a dynasty perspective, is Josh Palmer someone who can continue to grow in the Chargers offense? I will say this, Joe. I yesterday released Josh Palmer in a dynasty. I had to make room for the draft. And you know how it is, Stacy, with wide receivers in dynasty, right? There are wide receivers who will never do anything who are still on my team 10 years after I know for sure they'll never do anything. It's the hardest thing in the world to get rid of wide receivers. Does Palmer, though, with Quentin Johnston on board, is this something we're going to have to wait a little while for until there is no Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, or where are you at on Palmer?
Yeah, I think if you're, you probably need room on your roster at that point for somebody who is going to be a little bit more productive. And I think at that point, I think you're right, Bob. I think you kind of got to say adios to Palmer and maybe look for somebody to replace him that's going to give you a little bit more production.
I will tell you who I've replaced him with in this particular draft, because I know it's a player you like an awful lot, Marvin Mims, the Denver Broncos. Do tell your thoughts on Mims.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I mean, I could just like wax poetic about Marvin Mims, right? I just adore him. He's one of my favorite receivers coming out of this year's draft. I mean, all right, you want to say, oh, well, he's small, he's slight. So what? Everybody in this draft is, right? I mean, like you could probably name the bigger guys on, with your five fingers there because everybody else is a lot smaller. And I guess that's kind of the trend now. That's probably a topic for another day. But it doesn't matter that he's that little, right? Because he's so darn fast. You're not catching him. Nobody's catching him. He's getting down the field. He is separating. He's just, I'm so excited for all the potential with him. And I think his landing spot too, at first I wasn't real excited about it. But then the more I got to thinking about it, I was like, okay, look, Peyton went after him, right? It's Peyton's team now. This is the guy he wanted, he drafted. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think, he's not going to draft a guy or in that situation, I think with Mims and not use him and not find a place for him in that offense. And I don't really like Courtland Sutton this year. I've actually never been a big Sutton fan, but I think he's kind of on his way out. He's getting a little bit older. I think, especially in Dynasty, if you want to talk about redraft, maybe stashing him on your bench for, kind of the end of the season when those rookie receivers tend to come on a little bit more, is probably a good idea. But man, for Dynasty, I'm just so excited to have Marvin Mims on my team. I'm actually, and hopefully there's nobody in the Dynasty league that I'm drafting in right now listening, but I will be on the clock, right? In just a second here, I've got the first pick. And Team 12 is drafting, so going into that second round, and Mims is available. And I've got to decide between him and another player, and they're both on the top of my queue. So if I can grab Mims, I'm definitely doing it.
Okay, and Andrea did clarify she has just the one pick. So I like them, Andrea, absolutely in the order you list them. I think it would be a no-brainer for me to pick Brown since you already have Hurts there. And by the way, Dame Overboard notes that can one of those giant wide receivers play running back? Paris Campbell would say maybe I can. So we'll see. Beasley seems like the slot Sherpa for those young wide receivers, says Joe Aber, and I think he is probably correct there as well. Best ball, Steve Linder has a question for us. 12-team PPR, slow draft, waiting on his first pick. But here are the best available. CMC, Kelce, Ekler, Diggs, Brown, Bijan, Lamb. Who would you take with the pick 6 overall? Probably not far off his order. I think Diggs is the question mark for me. Go ahead. So CMC, Kelce, Ekler, Diggs, Brown, Bijan, Lamb. You get one of those.
Oh, gosh. So he's got the 6th pick and he has all those options available? Is that right?
I think he's hoping to have all those options available. That's what's available right now. He's still waiting for his first pick.
Okay. Well, if those are who's available, I think I'm taking McCaffrey. If you have the 6th pick and you can take Christian McCaffrey at the 6th pick, take Christian McCaffrey at the 6th pick. Yeah, 100% there.
And if he's gone, I'm not averse to going Kelce. I think that brings up a point here. Where is the Kelce point for you?
Yeah, right around there, right around 5, 6, 7. If I can grab Kelce, he's kind of the exception to that rule, right? Or I would normally either go, if I'm going to go running back, it's going to be one of those guys right up there, that McCaffrey, Ekler in that range. If my Chase, Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill guys are gone, sure. But man, I mean, Kelce's just, gosh, I mean, he's Travis Kelce. Right? I mean, it doesn't matter how old he is. I don't care. I will be taking him as high as I can until I actually see the wheels fall off.
Right. I did have both Chiefs and Rams reporters, Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest on the radio program last night. He essentially said the same about Kelce. I think I've asked you this question, Matt, 30 times over the course of your appearances on Diehards. Is any sign that Travis Kelce slowed down? He says, yeah, there's signs, but he was so far ahead that it's still so far separated from the pack. And also had Nick Hamilton from NBC LA, and he asked him about Cooper Kupp. He does think Cooper Kupp. I have Kupp ranked my wide receiver 1 this year. I like that points per game average. He thinks I am not out of line with that pick. He has high expectations. Thinks Matt Stafford's looked really good throwing the ball this summer and also endorsing his paychecks. So all is well in LA and that portion of the passing attack. So Steve, I think essentially the order you have them, CMC, Kelce, and Diggs, and after that Bijan would be for me. And then I'd probably go Brown, Lamb, Diggs after that. So there you have it. Jacob's a Dynasty Deviant out here. Judging, are you drafting with Dynasty Deviant? Jacob sits, is Zamir the guy?
Zamir, I hate that offense so much. I don't like that offense at all. I don't know. I mean, I took him a few places last year, right? And he didn't do anything. But of course, Josh Jacobs was, insane last year. So I don't know. I think that's going to be a really, really rough offense. And I think I'm personally just being really careful about how many Raiders I take out of that group. So if it were to me, I mean, if you want to get him as a last minute flyer, sure. But I don't know that I'm, going too crazy and trying to reach for him at all.
I've heard some people throw around some theories like maybe the Raiders wait out. And I know, I want to say one of the local, I think Vinny Bonsignor kind of shot this one down on Twitter, but people out there theorizing that maybe they wait a little while and let Jacobs twist in the wind a little bit. And if it's not working out, they go after Ezekiel Elliott or Leonard Fournette or maybe even Dalvin Cook type. Although I don't know if they want to pay up since they don't want to pay for Jacobs already. So I don't know if they want to pay up.
Right.
It might be a bit of might get more confused there before it gets clarity and before we know what fight is. Mr. Stamper's shouting out anyone who's still got Brian Edwards on their roster, who's been on his for 4 years. All airport team players are very important, Mr. Scampers, as you well know. Kevin Baracco, Rhamondre did cost me a Super Bowl spot with that goal line fumble, but that wasn't a fumble. Thanks for the non-challenge, Bill. By the way, Royal Slate out there, totally convinced Rhamondre will be fine. I pretty much am too. But again, one piece. Just on the thought of Dalvin Cook and these, these looming situations. I mean, he's been connected to multiple teams, the Patriots, the Dolphins, who we've heard him mention with Tampa Bay. Someone has asked a question about Rashad White out there, and I feel like, without knowing where it's going to go, how much do you let these kind of stories impact your draft decisions? It's easier for us, I think, in multiple drafts because we can kind of compensate in, 10 other drafts for the 10 that we've done something. But if you're sitting here and you're heading into your first draft, how much do you let those impact you, or how much do you let them change your approach? Do you avoid those players or look other ways, or how do you handle it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. If you're drafting a lot of high volume, I don't think it makes a one bit of difference, because you can just, play around with your builds and, you're going to draft, like you said, 10 more later on. So I don't think it makes that big of a difference. But if you are, like you said, going in and maybe this is your first draft, maybe you're only doing a handful, something a little bit more to pay attention to, right? Because I mean, all those teams, New England, Miami, even Tampa Bay to a certain extent, are going to be really affected by his signing. I mean, I think if he goes to New England, that is disastrous for people that have paid that second round, early third round price for Rhamondre, because that's going to definitely cause some, issues there. And I was really hoping that he did not go to Miami, because I just love Devon Achane, and I think that you can get that backfield with Mostert and Wilson really cheap later on if you're trying to do like a 0 RB. So that would absolutely be a disaster too. And, down there in Tampa, where I'm at, over, if you're taking Rashad White, I mean, he seems to be the guy. I mean, not too many other, guys, nobody's drafting Edmonds. And if you're drafting Tucker, it's very late. So, if he goes there, that causes some problems too. But yeah, I mean, if you're drafting high volume, I don't think it makes that big of a difference either until you're hearing some actual like substance behind those rumors that like, oh, they worked him out, or, oh, they're interested in him, something like that. I'm not really paying too much attention to that.
Again, a couple of things if you're not been listening to this live stream on a regular basis. To those who do, I'll bear with me here for a moment. But I think the things we're talking about today are not necessarily the things we'll be talking about a month from now. Right. Also, the public portion of negotiations are always the most contentious portion. So, you will hear people trash talking horribly the minute before a deal is done, because the work's being done behind the scenes and not in the public. They're just out there, try to create some perception and put a little public pressure on each side. So don't get too caught up into it. I do want to get into this Hector's question, because it goes back with Iceman 1800s. But first, Brian Larkin says, if Kelce is taken the first round and Mahomes is available second round, would you draft him or best available running back? I've done both. I think for me, Stacy, it's been the earlier I get Kelce, and I've taken him as early as first overall, all the way down through, I want to say 7. the earlier I take him, the more likely I am to get Mahomes with that second
Right.
round pick, then go around to the third round at the turn and get another player.
Yeah.
In the middle, I've gone running back. In my most recent best ball that I started, I went Kelce at 7, Pollard, and then Gibbs. And yes, I went early on Gibbs, and I'm going to drive his ADP up single-handedly, as everyone in this
I'll be
room
right
knows.
there with you.
Yeah. So is that like seem to be the approach for you, kind of depending on which portion of the first round you get Kelce in, whether you're interested in stacking?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a lot of fun to take a Kelce Mahomes stack. I mean, those two guys are going to just, absolutely give you a ton of points every single week. But the thing you have to remember there, though, is if you do that, then, if I'm assuming you're taking Mahomes in the second round, then you're, okay, now where am I at with receiver? What running backs are going to be available at that point for me to take? And depending on what you want your build to look like, you've got to make that decision. So if you do take Mahomes there, you are kind of sacrificing a little bit. You're going to go at those lower tier. I say lower tier. I mean, we're still talking about really good receivers in that range, but not your top guys. So I think you just have to kind of be aware that if you're going to do that, you're going to have to make it up on the back end and go after some more valuable guys at, the other two positions, with running back and receivers.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. By the way, Gator J still, I cook in Tampa when they walk away from playoff Lenny. I don't know where, honestly, we don't know where Cook. We've just heard teams, connected to him.
Yeah.
I don't know why any team would spend big money on Cook. I think Cook's going to have to come to
Right.
grips that he's not getting money. But I also think that when this comes down, that we might be totally surprised by the team he winds up with. It might not be someone we've heard in discussions. We might go back to someone we've heard previously, like the Denver Broncos, who maybe are out now and maybe not,
Yeah.
So I don't think we have a really good idea. And so they did let go of Lenny. I get it. And maybe, he'd be much cheaper. But Lenny seems to be losing a little gas in the running game. Still a very good receiver, though. So I want to hit some of these value wide receivers. Who are some of your favorite late round flyers that you find yourself getting in more of your dynasties?
Oh my gosh. Jahan Dotson is one of my absolute favorites. You can get him, I want to say around like the 7th, 8th round. And I love getting him there. I think that he, coming back, he missed several games last year, so that it still affected his production. But if I'm not mistaken, I think he still led the team with touchdowns actually, above McLaurin. Obviously, McLaurin's a number one receiver on that team for sure. But I don't think Dotson is going to be that far behind him this year. And I don't think it really matters, who they're going to have back there at, under center. And even if they don't have Howell there, they've got Brissett, who is a very serviceable backup. So I really love getting Jahan Dotson at his value in that range.
Wide receiver, so I want to say 38. Where is he at here? Wide receiver 38. So outside the top, you're drafting him as a wide receiver 4, a high-end wide receiver 4. I think he's kind of a lot of people's darlings. I'm finding myself getting a fair amount of him. A lot of late, super late guys that I'm taking like wild swings on. I was doing a lot of Tyquan Thornton early this offseason. I've slowed my roll on that a bit. The Devontae Parker re-signing worries me, although I don't think the money is that big a deal. But he's also had a soft tissue injury, Thornton has, that's kept him off the field most of the time. So that's a little bit of a concern for me there. But there are still plenty out there. I mean, Rashid Shaheed is
he's
one
a great
that
one.
I find myself taking some shares of as well. Super late in drafts. Any of those guys, any other players that you're taking, whether it is wide receiver or another position that you find yourself gravitating towards as we get into those rounds 19, 20, that you think like, I have a hunch?
Yeah, I like Rashid Shaheed a lot, actually. I'm glad that you brought him up. I think that's going to be a really fun offense this year, with Carr there. And I don't know how I feel about Michael Thomas. So after Chris Olave, right, Michael Thomas, and then you got Rashid Shaheed, hanging around back there. But I mean, Michael Thomas hasn't been really productive since I saw this on Twitter the other day, and I loved it. Since it's been before COVID, right? So like, put that into perspective. Back in like 2019. So I mean, it's 2023, guys. Like, I don't know that he's still that guy. I don't know that he still has that ability. But man, yeah, I actually do really like, not to piggyback off you, but you brought him up, and I was like, yeah, that guy, I really like him.
Yeah, I think some of the super late round guys that or way later round guys, wide receiver ones on any team that are going late. Juju Smith-Schuster, Nico Collins, I think are great plays. Romeo Doubs is one that intrigues me a little bit. Watson's price is super high. I know you're a big Packers fan. Do you have any thoughts on Doubs? Just in general on the Packers passing attack, which pieces have you been investing in?
Really, if I will take Christian Watson upon occasion. I don't know what to think about Jordan Love. Yeah, I don't think anybody knows. He hasn't had a lot of playing time, with Rodgers going, and I think there's a lot of questions there. But, by all accounts, it sounds like everybody loves him. I mean, that's, of course, what they're going to say. They're not going to say that they can't stand the guy, right? But I don't know about Doubs. I'm kind of staying away from Doubs. I'm a little questionable about, okay, they brought in Jaden Reed, right? So what does that say about Doubs? Do we think there's going to be a little bit more competition there? I really like getting Jaden Reed at his value if you miss out on Doubs. Like I said, I like Watson. Kind of staying away from Doubs a little bit, but I will gladly take Jaden Reed towards the end of my draft.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. There's a handful of guys that go in a similar range, and I'll just I always ask everyone the question: who scored more points last year in PPR? Was it Curtis Samuel or Debo? And it was Curtis, obviously, or I would be asking this question. Here's Curtis Samuel sitting out here as wide receiver 75. Hodgins, who we mentioned, is 76 on Underdog right now. Tyquan Thornton at 77. Paris Campbell at 78. John Mechie, not as keen on them. But there's plenty of guys out there super late that you're going to be able to just toss a dart at and hope they come through. And there's some pretty big names and guys with significant roles. Tim Patrick is another one in Denver, who, if you're worried, the talk this offseason, maybe Judy could move, maybe Sutton could move. Well, nobody's talking that way about Tim Patrick because I think he's a super solid piece and he's going to fit this offense well. So a lot of late round flyers we're finding at that position.
What do you think about Tank Dell? I know he's a rookie, but you can get him really cheap towards the end of your drafts as well. And I've been hearing such good news out of Houston from him or about him. I'm
trying not to put the Tutu Atwell thing on him being a miniature human, but the buzz is a lot more positive, right? So I had this on my list of topics today just in case we got to it, but one of my issues is investing in players on lousy offenses. Or at least offenses we expect to be lousy. Whether it's Houston, I mean, they're going to have their struggles this year. I think Davian Pierce is still decent, but Nico Collins, as a wide receiver one going in the, double-digit rounds seems like unreasonable. Yeah. But the Arizona Cardinals are another one, another offense that I have questions about. So there's a lot of questions. So I guess this fits in with that, Tank Dell as well. Just those offenses in general. Do you find yourself kind of avoiding them just almost naturally because the expectations are low and maybe there's value to be found there?
I think there's definitely value to be found there, especially in your later rounds of your drafts. If you're doing best ball and you're looking at stacking, maybe doing a little correlation. Houston plays Tennessee at the end of the year, and I believe that's a dome game. So dome games in week 17, give me all that I can get of those because the weather is so terrible. All I've been hearing out of Houston, right, is CJ Stroud really wanted Tank Dell in the draft. They went out and got him. These two are best buds now. They're, spending all their time together. They're doing the Stafford Cup thing. It seems like where they're really, trying to get on the same page. So, even though it's a bad offense, that doesn't mean that there's not value to be found there, that there's not going to be points that they put up. Somebody's got to get those points. The garbage time is a thing, right? So even it doesn't matter when they get those points, how they get those points are still helping contribute to your team, to your overall score every week. You're not reaching to get those guys. You're not, going crazy or anything. But later in the last rounds, those guys are still available. And you can get CJ Stroud so cheap. Tank Dell you can get in your last pick. In an 18 or 20 round draft. And I don't see any reason not to do that. I've done quite a few late round Houston stacks with that. But yeah, and you mentioned Arizona too. And I also had this as a guy that I wanted to talk about a little bit later is James Conner, right? If you're doing, he's probably the only Arizona guy that I really want to touch, but, if you're going and doing a 0 RB build, James Conner is the guy back there, right? Nobody else, there's no competition for that job. They're going to run him into the ground. Nobody knows what's going to go on with Kyler. He's not probably going to start the season. Does he even play this season? Who knows? I don't love their passing attack, but man, give me James Conner all day. I think he's a great value.
if I go to Best Balls 10 right now, as you said this, I wanted to look and see what my shares are of James Conner. He is my most invested in player, 43%.
Yep.
I should probably start dialing back here anytime. That would probably be a wise course. But I'm with you. I think those are the kind of pieces you're looking for. And also, don't overlook these free square kind of plays, people there. If you're not in Best Ball, if you're in drafts and you have deep benches, that's going to determine a lot of your approaches as well. But if you have deep benches, take flyers on these players who have legitimate roles that are going super late, and then move on from it if it's not working out. Gator J, his job today is to get me to sing. I only sing on Fantasy and Frames live streams, not on mine. So no singing today. Maybe a little bit. Happy birthday to Email at the end. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to even do that. The Joe Aver, the Bills seem to be hedging on James Cook. Should we be concerned?
Well, I mean, he's another one that you can get pretty late if you're doing that 0 RB build and trying to pick up some value at running back a little bit later. But honestly, I really like Damien Harris there as well. I think you can get him a couple rounds later. Not that I don't like James Cook. I actually have a ton of James Cook. And when I do a Bills build, he's probably one of the guys that I'm going after, just because it's a very easy fit to do that with him. But yeah, I really like Damien Harris in that role back there. I think they're going to be a little bit more equal than rather James Cook maybe necessarily running away with that number one spot overall. But yeah, I mean, I like both of them, but I think honestly, I think Damien Harris is probably a little bit better of a value.
When in doubt, always go with the Harris. That's what I'm told.
That's right.
That's my strategy. So, quick question from KJ Frederick. Full point PPR. Who do you prefer? Devontae Smith, Chris Olave, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen. I'll rank them for you right here. Cooper, Smith, Olave, Allen for me. Had Catherine Terrell from ESPN on, and she didn't slow my roll on Olave, but she did, she did kind of cool it. She says there's a lot of receiving assets there, and maybe we're going to see more Alvin Kamara in the receiving game. Do you have any concerns there, or do you see it any differently or materially differently than I laid it out?
Not really. I love Amari Cooper. I absolutely adore Amari Cooper. I just did a profile on him for Fantasy and Frames, and I mean, he's the guy in Cleveland, and I think, you could say, look, Watson came in last year and looked like garbage, and he did. But, he hadn't played in so long. So I think now, he's had some time to really, get with Cooper, to gel with Cooper, get in that offense, kind of get back to hopefully the, quarterback that he was. And so I think that their offense has the potential to be a lot better this year. And I don't care that Elijah Moore is there. I mean, I think that's fine, but I don't know how much that it eats into Cooper's target share. I wish I had my numbers in front of me, but I mean, he had such a significant amount of the targets for Cleveland last year. I mean, 30-something% if I remember right. But
yeah, I'm all in on Cooper this year, and I'm hoping that passing attack picks up the case. Older Budweiser would like to know. Half point PPR auction league keeper question, $100 budget. Do we keep Stevenson or Waddle at $8? Breece Hall at 12 or Jonathon Taylor at 17? Gator chimed in. He likes Waddle, and JT. I'm kind of leaning in that direction as well.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I love Jalen Waddle so much. Oh my goodness. I like that too.
Which lottery pick would you want? Tank Bigsby or the Jaguars running back, or Quentin Johnston, the wide receiver in Los Angeles?
Oh gosh. Oh, that's a toughie, because I really like both of those players there. I like Johnson's landing space there. Keenan Allen's getting a little bit older, right, inching towards that magical cliff where they all fall off once they hit 30. And he's, obviously had some injuries last year. So he could definitely step up and take over or get into that role with him and Mike Williams. But man, Bigsby is really set up to have a nice position as well behind, ETN. I mean, he's had a lot of injury issues, and, eventually if something happens, I don't see any reason why Bigsby couldn't just jump in there and take over that role as well if needed. Gosh, that is such a tough question. Let's go with Johnston. And I think it's a coin flip for me, really. But I'm going to go with my receiver just because I like receivers better.
Right. And I'm fine with that. I love the way Quentin Johnston, just eyeball test. This guy is looks like a man among boys. When you see him on the field, he is a monster. But I'll tell you this on Tank Bigsby, which I think is interesting. Mike DeRocco from ESPN on the Football Diehards radio program on Monday. You can listen to that today, too, by the way, at 5 p.m. Eastern time, people. 4 days a week now are the diehards. He said take Bigsby. He's going to kind of play that role we saw James Robinson play early last season, where he doesn't just come in and spell ETN. He gets like entire series, maybe 2 or 3 series a game. That does change his value a little bit for me. I'm fine taking flyers on either of them because they are flyers. So it might depend on how my roster is being constructed. If I feel like I need that guy that's going to maybe help me avoid getting a 0 at running back later on in the draft, it would be Bigsby. If I want to take like a huge home run swing, might be more like Johnston. Both of them, as you mentioned, have like players ahead of them who've had injury issues or ETN not so much injury issues other than his first year, but just like I have questions about ETN. I have questions.
I do too, and I just can't. I just don't get. It's almost like a vibes thing for me. Like I just don't love it. And yeah,
like he averaged 5 yards a carry last year. I mean, I feel like I'm slagging on him, but it's just like he wasn't great near the goal line. He didn't catch a ton of passes. I don't know. I find myself unenthusiastic, unlike Dame, who is very enthusiastic about Chris Olave. She cannot comment or she'll get kicked out of the house. I want to bring up, Evil, if we can bring up Stacy's Scott Fishbowl draft. I did want to address that because I think it was an interesting build. We all have, so many different approaches. Walking through the room at the live draft in Dallas, there were 4 drafts going on, and I was going and checking out. I picked 11th, and I'd go through and look at all the 11s. We all did totally different things, right? There was not like a single of us who took a different approach. So your approach was the Hurts Brown stack to start off.
Yes.
Was that a goal, and you went wide receiver heavy, by the way, early?
Oh, I did.
Was that the plan?
It was the plan. I mean, like I said, I am a wide receiver girl. I will take receivers as many as I can if it falls to me to do that. But the plan was definitely to take Hurts. Obviously, I had the number 2 spot in the Dole Whip division. Something really fun about Dole Whip is that because this is the Orlando live draft, is that we had 5 of our Fantasy and Frames people there, and then 3 of us were actually in Dole Whip, and we all drafted back to back to back. So 2, 3, and 4 were all of us. So we were just constantly sniping each other throughout the entire thing. But yeah, that was my plan actually, was to do Hurts. I really liked him there. I had Allen last year, had the number 1 overall last year, and took Allen. Nothing wrong with Allen. It's not that I didn't like him. It's just towards the end of the season, right? It gets a little bit colder. They're probably going to, snow games, running the ball a little bit more in that situation. So that's why I kind of like Hurts a little bit better this season, and just kind of wanted to shake it up a little bit. But yeah, I mean, if I can do that Philly stack, right, that's so nice, like to get him and Brown, and I think it was Andrea, right, or Andrea with her team. Like if she does that, that's all the way, girl. Like go for it.
Right. I think something like that, especially in Dynasty, sets you up for the long term, right? I mean, I love those situations. It's just like Burrow and Chase, and, and I mean, there's just certain combinations that you're going to have for years to come. And I feel really comfortable when you don't have to worry about it beyond that. I thought some of the picks that you went, quarterback 2 was Derek Carr, got in round 6, pretty reasonable price. Let's talk about your quarterback 3, Brock Purdy. Sounds like he will be ready to go. I still see people drafting. I would not be surprised if Trey Lance would have had a Sam Darnold in this draft. People are still drafting the hell out of Trey Lance. I don't understand why. I'll let them do it on their own. But you got Sam Darnold. Talk a little bit about your thoughts there. Was it just a supply and demand issue, or are you interested in Sam Darnold?
So it definitely was supply and demand. I had decided when I was going a little bit lower, I was like, all right, well, I've got Derek Carr. I need to get one more. And I was targeting Purdy. And he got sniped before I thought that he was going to go. And then my Dynasty 365 co-host, Tyler Heil, was drafting right behind me at 3. And I promise you he took Trey Lance. So I was like, I really wasn't interested in Trey Lance. So that kind of made my decision for me. I was like, and literally in that same round, in that 13th round. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to take a little bit of a gamble here on Sam Darnold. I think if anybody can make him into the quarterback that everybody thought he was going to be, it's going to be Kyle Shanahan, right? I mean, I think he could probably make any one of us into a serviceable quarterback. He's like the quarterback whisperer.
Do what he says.
Yeah, that's the key. That is the key. So I'm curious to see how that works out. If something happens with Purdy, maybe he's not ready week 1. I tend to think that he will be. But maybe Darnold steps up into that spot, or maybe, who knows, maybe Lance gets traded. We don't know. But I think Darnold definitely has some value, especially as a quarterback 3. I mean, I'm not taking him to start. I'm not planning on him starting. But he's kind of there as insurance just in case.
Yeah, I think Lance's only value comes if he gets traded, right? I mean, to me, that
Right.
seems like the only possible avenue for production, because I do think
Yeah.
Darnold sounds like is ahead of him. But we'll see. There's still some question to be answered there. I do like you got your guy Mims, who you're keen on. There's another
Yes.
rookie you're keen on, who you got in round 11. Sam
Yeah.
Laporta.
Oh my gosh, Sam Laporta. This is another one I could just talk about forever, right? I really like him. And he wasn't one of my favorite tight ends in the draft, like coming out, like when we're doing all of our, speculation about where everybody's going to get drafted. But I think him landing in Detroit is such a great landing spot for him. And that's what really kind of vaulted him way up in my rookie rankings. And it's kind of made him a little bit of a darling for me. And I looked earlier, I've definitely got a ton of exposure to Sam Laporta because, one, he's super cheap. But he goes in to Detroit, right? So I was looking at the numbers last night. The Detroit, offense had 88 total targets for their tight ends. And that includes Hawkinson and the other guys that took over his spot once he got traded. Brock Wright, Shane Zylstra, and I can't remember this guy's first name, but Mitchell is his last name. After all of that, Laporta kind of walks in, and he has the ability, he has the opportunity to jump in and be the tight end one. And especially with Jameson Williams being suspended for 6 games, who's number 2 behind, Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? We really don't know. I mean, Marvin Jones is there. I know that they just, got Denzel Mims as well, but neither one of those guys really, is anything to write home about for me at this point. I think Sam Laporta has walked in with some amazing talent, great opportunity. And one thing that I have always taken from Matthew Berry is that fantasy success is from talent and opportunity. And I think Sam Laporta has both of those in spades. And like I said, he's so cheap. You can get him at such a great value, really in any format, that that's why he's one of the definite targets for me this season.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I think, who else is there? Josh Reynolds, I want to say, and Khalif Raymond, a handful, just guys, right? I mean, they're just guys. And I don't think anyone's going to confuse Sam Laporta for just guys. So I'm with you there as well. Elijah Mitchell, I think, is an interesting pick. Jaylen Warren, they are similar players. Ty Chandler, Kenny McIntosh. You're hoping for a happy accident, I think.
Exactly. I'm a big Kenny McIntosh fan, especially in PPR formats. I want to say, and gosh, it's been so long since I looked at this stat, but I think that he was one of the very few college running backs that had a 500 season with 500 yards rushing, 500 yards receiving. And so I really like that. Seattle is going to run a ton. I've got Ken Walker there. So if anything happens to Ken Walker, I mean, you've got Charbonnet, who's ready to step in, who's another one of my faves this year, who I definitely got sniped on. And then Kenny McIntosh kind of lurking in the background up there in Seattle. And I think he could definitely play a role. And I mean, getting him in the 20th round, I have no problems with it all.
By the way, Mr. Scampers would like us to know he writes home about Marvin Jones Jr. all the time, so we should be careful of that. Our Marvin Jones Jr. slander. There's some of these players who just keep going. Before we get out of here, there were so many topics we didn't get to. I had a lot of questions. Really appreciate the questions, everyone. I know they'll start ramping up as we get closer to the season. We're here for that. We'll be back Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Or we won't be back this week at 7 p.m. I'm taking a couple days off, people. It happens. So football diehards, you will hear on Monday. I will not be there. Mike Dempsey will be on. Tonight, we'll be covering the Dolphins and Broncos. We'll have Curtis Patrick from RotoViz join us for the hour 2 portion of the program, talk a little Dynasty with Curtis, and get a little advanced on the Kings Classic and the Expo as well. But we're on every Monday, Thursday, and Friday, 10 p.m. to midnight. Saturdays 5 to 7. So listen to that. Go to footballdiehards.com. Use the promo code diehards. Get a 15% discount. The magazines, the digital versions are there now. The Pro Forecast 34th year looks fantastic this year. A lot of great stuff. So like you, Stacy. And by the way, follow Stacy. I think I did not even given out your Twitter yet. Follow Stacy on Twitter, everyone, at Stacy_Perez 83 PREZ 83. Do it now. Follow Fantasy and Frames as well. Tell us what you're doing every week so people can get an idea of what to look for.
Yeah, absolutely. So on Wednesday nights at 8, we are doing our Dynasty 365 show. And then on Thursdays, also at 8 o'clock, we Stephanie Miller and I are doing the best ball show where we are drafting in all sorts of different best balls. We just did a DraftKings last week, doing some of the underdog best ball manias, all the other little dogs that get tossed out during the season, the Pomeranians and puppies and all of those as well. So we have a lot going on over at Fantasy and Frames. We have so many good shows over there and so many great people, and I'm just so glad to be a part of that group. So.
Tons. Always enjoy coming on and getting my opportunity with them. Always enjoy seeing the fellas and everybody out there at the expo. So really appreciate you, everyone. Appreciate you coming. You have choices out there. I'm glad you choose us. By the way, I choose to watch you on Thursday nights. I love that best ball thing. And
Thank you.
I drafted with in Dallas at the live draft with Scott Fitz. So great getting a chance to meet her. All right, everybody. Appreciate your time. One last happy birthday to Emo. I'm not going to sing for him because that's his birthday request that there is no singing on the program today. So, again, we'll see you all next Saturday here at noon Eastern time. Hope to see you there, and go check out Stacy every chance you get and the Fantasy and Frames crew. We'll see you next time.